The prevailing strategic narrative is a calculated misdirection. You are conditioned to look to the skies for hypersonic missiles, a high kinetic cost scenario. This is a fallacy. The primary vector of attack is not a launch. It is absolute silence. The first phase of a systemic conflict will be the severing of data. Analysts at RUSI and CSIS have documented the extreme vulnerability of our undersea cable networks, the literal backbone of the global financial and military command and control system. This creates the Blind Leviathan Protocol, a hegemon with unmatched conventional power rendered deaf and dumb, its satellites blinded, its markets frozen, its logistics severed. While the West focuses on attritional warfare, evidenced by Russian campaign assessments, source number 3, and new drone degrees, source number 4, peer competitors are perfecting logistical dominance, source number 1. They are not preparing to defeat our military assets head-on. They are preparing to unplug the entire system. A blind Leviathan, already facing a solvency crisis, loses the ability to make nuanced decisions. Its strategic calculus defaults to its final, absolute leverage. Launch on warning from a state of pure, systemic desperation. The motive is not conquest, it is survival. Western analysis frames the Ukraine conflict as a miscalculation, an imperial overreach. This is a fundamental error. The operation is a calculated response to an internal solvency crisis. Peer competitors do not launch kinetic campaigns from a position of strength. They do so when the domestic liability of inaction becomes greater than the external risk of war. CSIS analysis confirms the Kremlin viewed the pre-war trajectory as a mathematical certainty of decline. An unpopular war is a known domestic liability, but it is a manageable one. An uncontrolled economic collapse fueled by internal pressures is not. The kinetic operation serves as a systemic pressure valve, externalizing a crisis that was approaching a terminal velocity inside its own borders. This pivot to external conflict is an admission of conventional weakness. Unable to compete symmetrically, the strategy defaults to asymmetry. The objective is not to win on the battlefield in a traditional sense, but to impose a disproportionate and unsustainable kinetic cost on the West. It is a blueprint for attritional warfare waged against a balance sheet. This is not a short-term vector. The Institute for the Study of War's long-range assessments, projecting offensive campaigns into 2026, confirmed the design is a slow, grinding drain. The West's response, such as the British Army's pivot to drone degrees, is a tacit admission that the high-cost model of warfare is now a solvency trap. We are adapting to their asymmetric cost imposition, not the other way around. This is the blueprint for weaponized solvency. When faced with terminal domestic decline, a state can pivot, transforming its weakness into an asymmetric weapon. It creates a prolonged, low-intensity conflict engineered to drain the adversary's treasury, deplete its arsenals, and fracture its political will. This isn't a war for territory. It is an attack on the financial liquidity that underwrites Western power. The core of the solvency trap is a mathematical equation. A $5 million main battle tank is now a systemic liability, neutralized by a $500 FPV drone. This isn't an anomaly. It is the new baseline for kinetic cost. The Royal United Services Institute, RUSI, has documented this asymmetric exchange rate extensively. For every exquisite, high-cost platform the West fields, our competitors can deploy 10,000 low-cost threats. This is the democratization of violence, the decentralization of lethal capability, stripping it from the exclusive domain of nation-state industrial power. The British Army's recent introduction of a drone degree is not a sign of proactive innovation. It is a reactive scramble to adapt to an attritional war of economics. They are structurally unprepared to win. Every drone on tank engagement is a 10,000 to 1 negative return on investment, an economic bleed-out designed to bankrupt our defense capacity long before the final battle. The conflict is not where legacy media directs your attention. The primary theater is a distributed network of gray zones, proxy laboratories for systemic stress. Reports from authorities like CSIS now model regions like Southern Africa and even internal Western territories as staging grounds. These are not areas of random instability. They are controlled environments for testing economic and logistical attrition models. Russia's attritional kinetic drain in Eastern Europe, documented by the Institute for the Study of War, established the baseline kinetic cost required to deplete Western inventories. This is now being refined. China, meanwhile, uses its commercial maritime fleet as a dual-use asset, perfecting the logistical warfare doctrine that the Telegraph confirms improves its odds in any direct confrontation. Financial fragility is simultaneously weaponized. The systemic shock of events like the rupee's plunge is studied and replicated to find the precise leverage points in allied economies. While the British Army initiates a drone degree to counter yesterday's tactics, our peer competitors are stress-testing the West's very solvency in these expendable zones, calibrating the final attack on our core economic viability. The Launch on Warning Protocol is not a policy of aggression. It is a mathematical function of deterrence. When early warning systems, satellites, ground-based radar detect an incoming nation-ending missile barrage, the protocol dictates an immediate, retaliatory launch. The logic is cold. You cannot allow your nuclear arsenal to be destroyed in its silos. This ensures a retaliatory strike, making a first strike suicidal for any adversary. It is the bedrock of strategic stability. This protocol, however, has a systemic liability, its absolute dependence on data integrity. A peer competitor does not need to launch a single missile. They only need to launch a cyber attack that blinds the radar. Analysts at CSIS define this as the fog of digital war. It is an asymmetric vector designed to sever the flow of information. The commander on watch is not presented with data showing an attack. They are presented with a void. The absence of signal becomes the signal. In that moment, the commander is forced into a solvency trap. Option A: do not launch. Assume it is a system malfunction or a non-nuclear cyber attack. If you are wrong, you have absorbed a full first strike. Your nation is liquidated, and retaliation is impossible. Option B: follow protocol. Treat the data blackout as a deliberate blinding action preceding an imminent launch. You execute launch on warning. If you are right, you have saved your nation's ability to retaliate. If you are wrong, you have initiated global thermonuclear war based on a ghost. The adversary forces you to make the final, catastrophic move. This is not theoretical. As reports from the Institute for the Study of War document the kinetic drain of attritional conflict and China enhances its logistical warfare capabilities, the non-kinetic vector becomes the optimal weapon. While Western military planners offer drone degrees to counter visible threats on the battlefield, our USI reports indicate the primary target is the command and control architecture itself. The erosion of conventional and economic solvency makes the nuclear trigger more sensitive. By creating a fog of digital war, an adversary makes our final leverage, nuclear escalation, the only rational response to their digital ghost. The pure competitor strategy is not a frontal assault. It is a systemic solvency attack. Before the primary kinetic phase, a calibration shot is required to measure the target's brittleness. This is not about destruction. It is about data acquisition. Analysts at CSIS note that China's logistical leverage, detailed in reports on its maritime capabilities, is the ideal vector for such a test. The prediction is therefore a mathematical certainty. Within 12 months, a major Western port, Rotterdam, Los Angeles, Singapore, will experience a cascading systems failure in its digital customs and crane automation network. It will last 72 to 96 hours. The event will be attribution impossible, publicly blamed on a sophisticated ransomware group or a catastrophic software update. The true purpose is to field test the lag time between logistical paralysis and a financial liquidity crisis, exploiting the Allied financial fragility observed in events like currency devaluations. This is not an act of war. It is a system diagnostic. They are measuring the precise time between the trigger pull on our economic base and the moment a launch-on warning protocol becomes our only rational response.